To you. 8 o'clock on the start of your Friday. Glad you're with us for Second Cup.
Friday.
We are finally at the weekend and, maybe a Friday news dump here. We are awaiting State Senator Sean Ryan. He is walking in right now, from what I understand, to chat with us here on Second Cup.
There he is.
Here he is. Good morning, Senator. How are you? Come on in. Come on in. How are you? Good to see you. Oh, no problem. Please.
You're going to get him all mic'd up and get going here. You're watching it live in action as we get going. We just welcomed our guests into Second Cup. People are saying good morning on this Friday.
Here you can unbutton
your
jacket.
Advantage TJF, now stop raining. We just heard a lot of rain come in here at the station.
All right. State Senator Sean Ryan is here with us this morning. Senator, welcome to Second Cup.
Thanks for being here.
We're glad you're here with us.
How's it going? It's a little rainy out there today.
Huh?
40 days and 40 nights.
You know what's so funny? He's looming large over the two of us.
I know.
This morning. We look like
we
children.
Look so little.
It's okay. Maybe I'll stand. Maybe that's a little bit better. That'll make me look a little bit better.
You gotta eat your Wheaties.
I know. You're right. Okay. So, Senator, we figured we'd have you in this morning to kind of talk about what's going on here in the city of Buffalo. Second Cup is really casual. So many of our viewers who are here with us, they're called Cuppies. We love them. It's a great community that we have here.
We like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they come in, they chime in on whatever the day's topics are.
Okay.
They bring questions, they ask about the weather, and just the daily topics and whatever we have going on. So we're expecting them to chime in, ask you some questions about what they're thinking about when it comes as far as the city of Buffalo.
Are you Manny? I am. Hi, Manny. Thanks for stopping by. We appreciate you. All right. So, Senator, you're running for mayor. Let's talk about that. As a state senator, former assembly member as well. Oh, bless you.
Thank you. I got one more.
I know. Welcome. This is what happens when you walk in here.
Yeah.
Honestly, it happens to all of us. All right.
How about that fire yesterday?
We want to talk about that as well.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
What do you make of it?
It's just so scary. So, to the Belts family and Kate Belts Foley, I'm glad no one was hurt.
Yeah.
But what a scary thing.
Yeah.
A long standing, standalone law office, one building. And I understand more than 100 firefighters.
Yeah, 4-alarm fire.
That's amazing. My dad was a Buffalo firefighter, and it harkens back to, he would come home after days like that and say, oh, 4-alarmer last night. And they would talk about, what happened and how they fought the fire. So I'm so happy no firefighters were also hurt.
Well, we found out that one was actually taken to the hospital for dehydration, but otherwise really no serious injuries. Nobody outside in the community was hurt, which is certainly some good news, knowing the magnitude of this fire. I wanted to start here, Senator, with kind of a broad picture here, because this week we saw some really serious news come out about the Buffalo Public Schools, and a lot of people have been tuning in to get updates and information about that.
Right.
A Buffalo police detective, as I'm sure you know, has come out on a podcast and made allegations that the Buffalo Public School system is covering up sex assaults inside the schools. What are you calling for as a state senator?
See, this is the thing, is there's been a constant push and pull between the Buffalo Public School and the police department, for a long time. Former Commissioner Gramalia really was working very hard to straighten that out before he got discharged. So now we're sort of back to not having the relationship with the schools, but we have to figure it out. Like, who's in charge when a crime happens in the school? What's the role of the BPD versus they have their own security at the school districts? But this allegation is one of larger magnitude, but this is not the first time there's been a clash between who's in charge, the school security or the Buffalo Police Department.
Well, how do you figure that out then as mayor? What's your role in all of this?
It's called leadership. And you get the people together and you hammer out the rules and you make sure that the rules are followed. But one thing we've seen in Buffalo is there's a real propensity to ignore problems. And you hope they just go away, or you hope they don't come to light. So this never would have come to light, but for an officer with a podcast. So we have to have ways to allow more transparency, but also, you can't have these long festering problems. You got to tackle the problem and figure out, who is in charge of security.
tackling it head on. And when it comes to transparency, how would you handle something like this? Or maybe it's this problem or other problems. We see these things come up, and you're talking about the Buffalo Public School District. That's a lot of parents. That's a lot of families that are impacted. When these things happen and we have an issue, how do you address it with transparency for our community?
If the municipality makes a mistake, you got to go out there and fess up and own the mistake. If people inside didn't follow the rules, you have to have procedures in place to hold people accountable. But you can't just hope it'll go away. There was another incident a few months ago with, two police agencies and a police officer in an accident, and there's just an effort to sweep all that away, and hopefully no one would find out. But that's not good policies, right? The public has to have trust in their institutions, whether it's the school district, the police departments. But you don't build that trust unless you explicitly say, here are the rules, here's who governs these situations. And it's been kind of a shoulder shrug, and get stuck between two institutions and nothing happens.
I just want to push back a little bit, because what you're saying here is that, you sit everyone down, you kind of are the middleman here. What I'm
you're
hearing.
Not the middleman, you're the leader.
Well, fine. But on one hand, really traditionally, Buffalo's mayor has not overseen the school system. So there's a little bit of a disconnect here in what you're saying.
Yeah, but they oversee the police department.
Right.
And the police department has jurisdiction in Buffalo schools.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where you have to provide the leadership role.
For the police.
For the police. Yeah. You're the CEO of the police department.
Mm-hmm. So are you satisfied with the way Buffalo police are handling this?
It's not Buffalo police's. It's the division between the Buffalo Public Schools own security officers and the BPD, who has the jurisdiction in those buildings.
So I just want to be clear about what you're saying here. So this is a jurisdictional battle, essentially, between the schools and the police department. Yet, even though the Buffalo Police Department has really only come out and issued a very minor, benign statement, you say that they are handling this correctly.
There's not enough facts to say who's in the right or who's in the wrong, because it's off of one officer's podcast.
Right.
So this is why you have investigations. But you have to have open investigations where you really pull the facts out, not attempt to make the problem go away. All too often, in elected office, people's first instincts is to pretend the problem didn't happen and try to minimize the problem, rather than just bringing it out. Sometimes you got to bring it out and you got to show the public what's going on, and then you can come up with a fix.
So Elizabeth has a good point here, and we invite you to join in here, ask your questions of the state senator, who again is running for mayor in the city of Buffalo. And Elizabeth's question is, how is subpoenas a jurisdictional issue? So what the officer, Detective High, had claimed was that the school district is not answering subpoenas and is doing anything it can to block people from assisting in the DA's office to aid in the investigation. So her question is, how is ignoring a subpoena a jurisdictional issue?
Well, ignoring a subpoena is a legal issue, so it doesn't really matter who's in charge. If you have a judicial subpoena, it's got to be answered.
And then Sarah wants to know, did Buffalo Public Schools ever have school resource officers from BPD, or would they? And the answer is they do have SROs in school.
It's a little different, because they also maintain their own security officers.
Right.
So they have their own head of security. And they also have the relationship with Buffalo, and you see this played out at McKinley,
right?
Because a school resource officer, not a Buffalo police officer, was injured in that.
Right. Remember that was a couple of years ago, right before the Top Smash shooting.
Right.
There was that concern where there was a gun brought to campus, and it turned out to be a stabbing. It was all a very confusing situation.
And that also brought up this question of who is getting the information.
Right.
Are they reporting that to the Buffalo Public School Security, or does that report go out generally through the 911 system?
Interesting.
And then for parents, when do they get that information? How do they get that information? I think, with that situation, there was a lot of confusion. I remember we were on the phone with a parent who was trying to communicate with their student. And then in this situation, parents have a lot of questions. So, when it comes to whether it's the jurisdiction, who's in charge, we're talking about subpoenas, for parents, where does that transparency come in for whether it's the district or the police department?
Yeah, that's what I go back to. Like, often when there's problems, we go into our shell and try to marshal the facts,
right,
and make the institutions look good. But you just have to be strong enough as a leader to just put it all on the table. Here's what's happening. You can't respond to every allegation, but you have to be open and transparent. We're going to look into it, and looking into it doesn't mean, fixing the problem. Looking into it means putting all the facts on the table.
Do you think the schools have been transparent enough here?
It's unclear. These allegations are just days old.
Yeah. I want to switch to the economy here because
and I would also just be clear that the officer is speaking on his own time.
In his capacity, though, as a detective, he's
speaking a little bit both ways. So he's not speaking on behalf of the Buffalo Police Department, and so that's the other sort of thing here is you have an officer saying he doesn't like how things are going, but the Buffalo Police Department hasn't really spoken on this issue.
Do you think that's a problem?
Well, it's an oddity. Usually within the chain of command, you don't have, you have rules of how to engage with the public over incidences.
Interesting. I want to switch to a topic that, you and your opponent, or one of your opponents, Acting Mayor Chris Scanlon, are really on opposite sides of the spectrum here. We're talking about the economy. We're talking about the budget. Buffalo right now has a $40 million budget deficit. And, at one point we heard it was as large as 70.
That number keeps changing. We heard 70, 50, 60, 40. Either way, there's a lot of money, right? And money.
Does that give you great confidence that we don't know how much our budget deficit is?
Well, it seems like it's a big problem, right? So how do you tackle something so large? And the acting mayor has his plan. He's submitted to the Common Council, and you have submitted what your plan is with bonds. Tell me about your plan and how it differs from the acting mayor's plan, and how efficient yours could be versus.
Sure. I mean, this is the deal with the city of Buffalo right now. One day we have a $40 million deficit. The next day we have a $70 million deficit. Other outsiders are looking at it saying we have a $90 million deficit. How is it possible that the city doesn't know what its deficit is? So they need to be open and say, we got to have the state comptroller come in and look at our books and actually figure out what our deficit is. Because you can't put a plan together to fix your deficit if you don't know how much it is. I mean, think of your household budget. Oh, my checkbook's out of balance, but I don't know by how much. So, might not be able to go to the movies next weekend. But do you have a $1,000 deficit, or do you have a $10,000 deficit? So right now, this idea of how much, they're designing a number that they can say they fixed. But we've seen for 13 successive years, every budget the acting mayor has voted on has been out of balance. And every year they fixed part of it and then kicked a little bit down the road. And they kept doing one-shot gimmicks to be able to fill their holes, whether it was money coming in from the Seneca Nation, marijuana revenue, federal money coming in, spending our reserve account. Now we're down to no money in reserves. There's no free money coming in on the horizons, and they have a big whopping deficit. But you first step has got to be actual honesty with the people of the city of Buffalo. How much do we really have in debt? And do you have a budget you're putting together just to get through primary day?
Okay, so let me push back a little bit, because here on the other hand, the acting mayor has some plans in place that he says would be fiscally responsible. And he also says that there are things like the parking authority that could be developed through the state, the bed tax that could also be developed through the state, both of which need state approval.
Yeah.
And he claims that you are playing politics here by not necessarily voting in favor or even presenting this on the floor. So are you playing politics here?
Yeah, absolutely not. It's often the pot calling the kettle black. The guy screaming politics is often the guy playing politics. So bed tax, we need to bring everyone together. Hospitality industry, the convention and business bureaus, the hotels, the culturals, to say, what do we got to do about the bed tax? They don't want to do that.
But other municipalities have.
But how do they do it, Ed? They have their public meetings. Everyone comes on the same page and says, we want to do this. I voted on dozens of bed tax. I've never had an opposition memo. But the city of Buffalo, hotel people are against it. The Convention and Visitors Bureau tell you why it's a bad idea and why it's a worst idea today. Mm-hmm. But trying to ram this through during the budget process means there are no public hearings. No one from the industry or from the culturals gets to talk about it. And the city council itself doesn't have to take a vote approving it. So it's a quick fix. And I'd mind you, it's sort of a side distraction. You got a deficit between 40 and $90 million, and you're making hay over something that will bring in at the most $3 million. So not the biggest issue.
So how's your plan with the bonds better than that?
Right.
Yeah, well, let me tell you, the real weakness of the mayor's plan, acting mayor's plan, is, first of all, you're trying to cover a debt that you don't know how much it is. But magically, we have a debt that's $40 million, and I got a plan to sell my parking ramps for $40 million. It's amazing how those numbers just fit on top of each other. And there's been no valuation of the parking ramps. No third party has come in and said, here's how much we think we can sell these parking ramps for. Here's how much repairs need to be made. Here's how much revenues come in on them. So it's just one more gimmick. And here's the other thing. Even if we give the city this authority, you're not standing up and selling your parking ramps in a few months. So you've got to do all the due diligence, right? So independent person has to come in and verify the worth. Another independent agency, probably engineering firms, have to come in and do an assessment of the conditions of the parking ramps. So if the conditions of the apartment ramps are really bad, that brings your value down. And then the third thing, they bring someone in to say, how much revenues will these parking ramps generate? We know number of people coming downtown is low. So people parking at the ramps is low. All these factors indicate what their price is going to be. Then you have to put all this together and then go to Wall Street, to go to the bond market. And some company has to say, I want to buy these bonds because I've done all this due diligence. The chances of getting that done in less than 18 months is very, very slim. And they're saying this money will immediately come to the city of Buffalo. It's just not true.
On the flip side, though, your bond program would only add more debt for the city of Buffalo. So how is your plan better than what the acting mayor is proposing?
Debt is something nobody wants to get into, but every company that gets in trouble, they restructure their debt. I can't afford to make debt at the current payments, so let me stretch that debt out for a longer period of time. People do it themselves in their own homes. I buy a house, I can make my house payment for a good number of years. I get my hours cut at work. Something happens, one of the wage earners stopped earning wages in my household. What do? Do you sell your car to make your house payment so you can't get to work anymore? No, you go back to your bank and you refinance your loan. And that's what people do.
I understand what you're saying here, but you also criticize the acting mayor for kicking the can down the road for 13 years, passing this unbalanced budget, in your words. But isn't that what you're doing with that bond program at the same time?
No, absolutely not. See, this is the thing. You sell your parking ramps, you can sell them once. Let's say you get your $40 million. Next fiscal year, you start $40 million in debt again. Like, that's a can kick. It's a one shot designed to get you through one budget. But we're structurally unbalanced. We know in the next fiscal year, we're going to start in the wrong side of the ledger, and that only grows. So you have to do an honest assessment of what is our debt over 4 years, because you got to pay it. Mm-hmm. You're going to have to pay it. So next year, they're going to have to pay that. It doesn't go away just because you avoid it for 1 year. So you got to be an adult, and you have to actually bring in actual fiscal advisors and figure out what's the best way to get out of this hole. And this is what cities around New York State have done who've got into Buffalo type problems. It's a common vehicle. So that's what happens. I mean, we take out debt every year to do capital spending with. Mm-hmm. So, you can do a can kick. You can hope and pray that this $40 million comes in. But if the parking ramp sales doesn't work, you're out of money by July. Then what are you going to do? You're out of money by July. Then what are you going to do?
Let's go to Brian's comment here. He says you've said that the affordability crisis isn't a problem we can solve with 90 million, and it's not a problem we can solve in a year. But for working class Buffalonians like Brian, that sounds like a long wait while rents keep rising. What immediate actions are you taking to ensure affordable housing is accessible now, not just in the distant future?
Yeah. Well, affordable housing is something, that I've been focused on in my time in state government. Last year, we put together a plan called the City of Good Neighborhoods, and that'll take money to go to seniors who own doubles, who have part of their double empty, to get their double back online, to put more apartments on the marketplace. We think there's 4,000 vacant apartments in Buffalo, mostly in doubles. So we're going to get those units back online. That's happening right now. That money's on the street. People have applied, have been accepted. And then the second program we have is a program called the Block by Block program. We have this is like the city budget. We don't really know the number, but there's between 10 and 20,000 vacant lots in the city of Buffalo right now. And there's no plan to get those lots back online, to get houses built on them. So we came up with a program this year in New York State that'll allow working people who live in the neighborhoods to put houses back on the vacant lots. We have blocks all over Buffalo, mostly on the east side, that have 2, 3, 4 vacant lots. Used to be houses, used to be tax-paying houses, used to be neighbors. We're going to get those vacant lots, turn them back into houses to actually restore the strengths of our neighborhood. So that's how we're going to tackle affordability. The whole time that, Brian, that the city forever was shrinking, and we were demolishing houses left, right, and center. Well, for the last 10 years, Buffalo's been growing, but we never stopped demolishing the surplus houses. So right now, we're out of houses. There's hardly any vacant houses anymore. So if we want Buffalo to grow by another 10,000 people, this is the way to do it. You got to invest, you got to build new houses, and that's what the state doing. The state continues to invest in the city of Buffalo.
I just want to press pause for a second because Aaron is going to have to come in and do traffic and weather in just a little bit. So you'll hear us kind of switch over in just a second, and then we'll come back with the senator. But Senator, maybe what you could do is briefly answer Elizabeth's question in the meantime. Programs that don't benefit the lower middle class that qualify for services, but not all of them, how does that help us? Elizabeth, maybe you can clarify your question here a little bit for the senator.
Someone did ask earlier, while we can talk about infrastructure briefly. Someone said the sidewalks, talking about potholes, you talked about vacant lots. When you're driving around Buffalo and you're seeing some of these issues, how do we address those and infrastructure problems in Buffalo?
I mean, this goes back to the basics, right? So Buffalo can't plow its streets. They can't fix its potholes. They can't open their swimming pools. Most of this is just really, really bad leadership and really bad management, but it's also because we're in this budget hole every year where we don't have the money to provide basic city services. And every year it's the can kick, right? This year the can kick is going to be, we want to sell a revenue generating asset, but that's not going to get our potholes fixed. That's not going to get our streets plowed, and it's not going to get our pools open. So we have to commit, and I will commit to having the basics work for Buffalo. It's astounding to me that we can't do the basics of city government. Cheektowaga knows how to do the basics. Lackawanna does the basics. Tonawanda does the basics. But somehow only the city of Buffalo can't figure out how to plow its streets. It's like every winter they're surprised that it snowed. And then every springtime they're surprised that there's potholes. And I'll tell you something else that's super disturbing. We found out that the city of Buffalo is sitting on tens of millions of dollars of unspent money given from the state to the city to do extreme winter recovery, to fix potholes, to pave roads. $37 million of unspent money. Every other municipality we gave the pothole money to spent that money last year. The city of Buffalo is asking to roll the money over because they didn't spend the free money to fix potholes.
We're going to talk more about that in a second. I want to just make sure that we're giving ample time to switch over for Aaron. In the meantime, we'll go back to that. Answer Mark's question briefly, if you would, Senator. Where do you stand on the 33 project?
So the community is really divided on the 33. There's no common answer to this. So I listened to a lot of people in the community in the last few months. You get 10 people in the room, you get 10 different opinions. So I made it my job is to make sure we preserve that $1 billion. So when the Buffalo residents are going through their process of figuring out what is the best thing, we want to make it so the state money is still there.
But where do you stand on it? Do you support it? Do you not support it?
Not enough data anywhere. So it's just what the community is saying. I want more information. What is going to be the result? If we do the cap, what's going to be the result? What's going to happen with the air quality? All unanswered questions. But I tell you why we get into these beefs all the time in the city of Buffalo. So, remember the Skyway project? Skyway hasn't changed. Remember, we're going to fix the Skajaqua to the 198. No change there. Now we've got the same situation with the 33. Each of these incidences, one thing is missing, and that's city leadership. The city should be at the helm of these projects. City of Rochester is going through a project to remove their interloop highway. The person in charge of that is the city of Rochester. So Buffalo takes the back seat in all these things, and the people's voices don't get heard, and we end up with projects that stall over and over again.
All right, we're going to press pause here because I think Aaron is coming up probably within the next 30 seconds or so. Again, if you have any questions that you want to have the senator answer, feel free to weigh in here, throw them in the comments here. And Senator, if you don't mind, would you stay with us a little longer?
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Okay, great. We'd appreciate that because I think that there's a lot of issues here that we can break down. We should also point out that WKBW is hosting a debate in June. Senator, you've agreed to be part of that.
Yes.
And we'd invite any of the other candidates to be part of this as well. So again, put your comments here, ask your questions, and when we come back after Aaron does traffic and weather together, we'll be sure to chat with the senator some more. He's running for the City of Buffalo mayor, and so stand by for us so Aaron can get on TV.
Are we off?
We're going to switch over. Hang on one sec.
All right, good morning, everyone. Here's a view of the 190 coming into downtown Buffalo northbound. It is a slow go, disabled vehicle around exit 5, slowing things back down to exit 2. So as you make your way to downtown Buffalo, the rain is coming down, and you are driving very slowly with that disabled vehicle kind of blocking the right lane, slowing things down at the moment. Roads are wet here in the metro area, but they're attracting this rain that is moving coming in off of Lake Erie. Some showers from East Aurora back toward Hamburg and Elma, and we can go street level toward Chief Water, right near the Galleria Mall, Maryville Drive, Cleveland Hill, with the rain coming down rather heavily right near the airport as this moves off toward the east-northeast. And we'll have these showers around this morning. The showers becoming more numerous, though, later this afternoon, and expect some rain in Batavia by around 8:50.
Like I mentioned, with the showers and storms developing later today, we do have a marginal risk for severe storms down across the southern tier. So right along the state line, notice shaded in a little bit of a darker green right there. That's from the Storm Prediction Center with the marginal risk for some severe weather, mainly along Interstate 86. Currently, with rain here in Buffalo, 57 degrees, winds out of the southwest at 13 miles per hour, 59 in Jamestown, 62 in Batavia. Here's your hourly forecast. Temperatures will be in the low to mid 60s this afternoon. Breezy with those showers and thunder showers really starting to pop up. So some spotty showers this morning. Notice the rain this afternoon with the storms across the southern tier. We're all getting rain Saturday morning, and be prepared for some more wet weather as we head into your Sunday. Your forecast for today, a high temperature of 65 degrees, some showers this morning, more showers and thunder showers this afternoon. Wind southwesterly 15 to 30 with higher gusts. Tonight, rain showers and cool temperatures. Overnight lows in the mid 40s. Tomorrow, we're in the low 50s, low to mid 50s on Sunday with rain showers for both Saturday and Sunday. Unsettled and cool for the upcoming weekend. Some thunder showers on Monday with highs in the upper 60s.
All right. So let's come back here. You just heard Aaron do the weather. You mentioned a lack of leadership among so many of the politicians. And I want to circle back to that, Sean.
Sure.
Senator Ryan, excuse me. One thing in particular that I hear is from you in particular is that we need better leadership. We need more leadership.
We do.
Have you been unsatisfied under the Brown administration for as long as he was in office, or when did this lack of leadership idea come into fruition?
So my biggest challenge the whole time I've been in the state legislature is working with the city of Buffalo.
Why was that a challenge?
Because you can deliver money, you can deliver programs, but unless you have a city willing to execute these programs, they don't work. As I said, before we took the break, we delivered all this money to Buffalo to fix its roads, and the money sat in an account, wasn't spent.
So is that a Byron Brown problem, or is that a Chris Scanlon problem?
It's the whole City Hall problem. It's the leadership, right? So Chris Scanlon's been in City Hall for 13 years. He's been in leadership positions in the council for years. And so, no one can wash their hands of it. And if you've been in City Hall for a dozen years to say, well, I'm born today, only judge me from today going forward. These are the problems that have lingered year after year in City Hall. And we've just adopted this strategy of ignoring problems, whether it's like we don't have a basic program in place to pave our streets. We don't have these normal processes that other municipalities all have adopted. What is our 5-year plan to show our deficit? What is our 5-year plan of our revenues coming forward? That's what we in the state government do every year.
So if you're elected, how does City Hall change? If it's been an issue for so long, right? If you,
Yeah.
as you're saying, a long-standing issue, 13 plus years,
Right.
I imagine it would take a lot of, overhauling and restructuring. How would you change City Hall?
Yeah, so, the minute I win the election, we're going to put a transition team together to look at every department in City Hall. A real fresh, open look at it. We're going to have people who currently work in City Hall on the team. We're going to have people from other municipalities who do similar work on the team. So we're going to go through every aspect of the departments and figure out what's working the best, what's not working, and how to fix it. But sometimes if you're a part of an institution, you just you go along with the institution without really taking a step back and saying, does this make sense? Do we actually have a paving schedule for the city of Buffalo streets that makes sense? Is it based on what roads are the worst? And I'll give you an example of the frustration is, we spent a lot of state and federal money building out the medical campus. We built 2 buildings on Main Street. We built the University of Buffalo's medical school, and the city promised once we got that last big project done, they would pave Main Street. Well, Main Street's exactly the same. They haven't paved it, yet they have this money that's sitting there. So that's the frustration. You deliver money and say, I want to put a park on Massachusetts Avenue in this big vacant lot. And the money goes there and then nothing happens because you can't make them spend the money. But what there's not is really a commitment to excellence. It's always based on this. I don't know if we can do that. It'll add cost. I don't know if we can do that. If it'll add cost. But if you try to do that in Tonawanda, say, oh, good news, taxpayers, we're not going to open our pools this summer. It'll save you a few dollars. People aren't happy about that. I have a pool near my house on the west side. This will be its 4th summer in a row that it hasn't been opened. Years after year, we can't hire lifeguards. Every other municipality can hire a lifeguard. And then last summer, it said, oh, no, there's a part. We need to get a part. Well, you had a closed pool for 3 years and you didn't do an assessment of it, and now it doesn't open again. And when West Side kids don't have a pool to go to, they migrate down to the canal and to the river. And that's always a recipe for tragedy. But this is the idea of the basics that we're missing in the city of Buffalo.
I understand what you're saying here, and especially with the pool issue, but then we get into the issue of raising taxes.
Yeah, hold on. Let me just be really clear. The city of Buffalo did not raise taxes for 10 years. This is why we're in this hole. Every homeowner during that period of time, their electricity went up, their gas care went up, their health care went up, the price of eggs went up, everything went up. So the homeowner either gets a raise or they start working more hours. So the city of Buffalo did something that was just so unwise. If they had done 3 tax increases of 1.5%, 3 times in the last decade, they wouldn't be in this problem. But they kept kicking the can down the road, thinking they could run on this, magic economy of having increased expenses and lowered revenues and somehow make a budget match. It doesn't work.
In the meantime, though, or the control board, rather, just this week has said, okay, maybe we should raise taxes. County Executive Mark Poloncarz has made that suggestion, among others. Fred Floss, who's also on the control board, have all said, okay, it's time to raise taxes in the city of Buffalo. But
the city budget itself put in nearly a 10% tax increase.
That also, but you don't necessarily agree with the tax increase. Do you not? Or you want to see
moderate tax increases have to be done in the city of Buffalo over a multi-year period.
So you don't agree with the way taxes are being raised under this plan?
No, I think you're missing the broad point here, Ed. You can raise taxes this 1 year and you can sell your parking ramps once, but at the end of this year, you're going to have another $50 million deficit looking at you on day 1 of the next fiscal year.
I'm not missing
that's
the
the
point
idea
here.
of about a structural balance.
I understand.
Okay.
But what I'm asking, though, is do you support raising taxes the 8 or 10%?
Until we know how much this hole really is, because if the hole is what the control board is saying, which is $20 million more than acting mayor is saying, we're even in bigger problem. So, this is all an effort to say we're not in a crisis and just try to just let us just vote on one more budget that doesn't work. And, we can all stop talking about the budget until at the end of the year.
You know what? I think maybe we end it there. That's a great point, and I think we got some really good information from you. You know, there are a lot of comments coming in here. We talked about crime. We talked about finances. We talked about the budget, infrastructure, a lot to talk about here.
Yeah, sure.
But certainly we have a limited amount of time.
Yeah.
We would invite other candidates to come on as well and be part of the conversation here on Second Cup. And we appreciate the senator's time this morning. So we thank you for being with us as well. We'll see you on Monday.
Let's have a good weekend, guys.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Yep. Stay dry.